Hey, fourth grade. Today we are talking about the New England colonies. So, this is a review. We've already talked about these colonies this year in class. This is just a review to get your mind back on the colonies here near the end of school, just a refresher of information. And this will be kind of where we pick up next year with fifth grade. You'll be jumping right into the 13 colonies. And so, we're going to go through these. Here's our map. See, the first New England colony was Maine. Well, that's not necessarily the first one. It's the first one we have on our map here. We have Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Rhode Island. And those are the colonies of New England. And we'll leave our map there where you guys can see them while we're talking about these colonies. The New England colonies were founded for two reasons. We're going to list them in the order of what was really important to the founders of the New England colonies first, and then their secondary reason will come after. The first reason is that they were very desperate for religious freedoms. If you think back to what was going on in England at the time, where most of these colonists initially came from, you had to go to the Anglican Church of England. And if you didn't go to the Church of England, you were persecuted, you were arrested, you were ridiculed, you could even be put to death. And a lot of people didn't like the Church of England that lived in England, but they had to go to that church by law. And that goes back to the 1500s. If you think back, we talked about this. The King of England at the time was named Henry VIII, and he wanted to get divorced from his wife. The Pope, at that time, went back up a little bit. England was a Catholic nation at the time, and Henry VIII wanted to get divorced from his wife um, because she wasn't having any children, and he wanted a male heir. The Pope, who was the head of the Catholic Church and still is to this day, different man at this time, but he refused to grant the divorce. And so the King of England broke away from the Catholic Church, made up his own religion based off the Catholic Church, and made the Church of England and made himself the head of the church so that he could get divorced. And so then we had a couple of different groups of people that wanted to not go to the Church of England, and some of them we called the Pilgrims. Sometimes we called them separatists. They wanted to separate from the Church of England and practice religion the way they thought it was right. And then we had the Puritans who wanted to purify or change the Church of England. They thought it could be saved. They were all harassed and arrested and treated unfairly in England. And by the time they got to the mid 1600s, they knew that England was not the place they could ever practice their religious beliefs the way they really wanted to. So they asked, "Are they said, well, where can we go that we could practice our religious beliefs the way they wanted to?" And they had a chance to go to the New World, to North America, and practice the religion that they wanted to practice, how they wanted to practice, without interference from the King of England. And so they moved to England, they moved to New England for religious freedoms. And then they also moved to New England for a chance to own their own land and a chance to make money when they took up a trade in New England. Some other facts about New England to keep in mind. Farming was not very easy. The soil in New England was very rocky and sandy, and the climate was very cold. So they didn't have a very long amount of time each year in which they could grow crops, and the soil wasn't fertile. So the crops they did manage to grow didn't grow well. They didn't grow vast amounts of crops in New England. The climate and the soil just didn't allow it. But there were some other things they could do for a living in England, and that was fishing and whaling. Um, every colony in New England except for Vermont had a coastline with the Atlantic Ocean, and so that meant that they had lots of opportunities to make a living from the sea, They could become commercial fishermen, and they could also become whalers. And a whaler would go out in a boat and hunt whales. They mainly wanted the whales for their blubber, and they could make and their oil. They could make um, candles and things from that. And then the other business that they had in New England that was a big deal was the lumber business. There were lots and lots of forests in New England, huge, thick, dense forests that went for thousands of miles, and they could cut those trees down, and that became and then sell the lumber. In addition to lumbering, they also built ships in New England. They took that lumber and they immediately started building ships. A lot of the lumber would have been cut down and sent back to England um, to be manufactured into furniture and other items, and then brought back to the colonies and resold. Other facts: the center of all the towns in the early towns in New England would have been the church because they were all really worried about religious freedoms. And that was also be kind of like the government buildings for the towns in those days. So you basically got no separation of church and state. There was no separation between church and the people in charge of each of these towns that were being built in New England at the time. And the churches were sometimes called meeting houses because that's where they would have their meetings for government. And so there was not much separation between the church and the state. And the text, you're going to find some more details than what I went over just now. I just gave you a very super quick overview. And this, you look through here, the first paragraph talks about why people were fed up with the Church of England. The second paragraph here is going to go into a little bit more detail about why there was a Church of England in the first place. The third paragraph tells you about pilgrims and the Puritans. The next paragraph talks about why they wanted to come to the New World or North America. And then we've got some facts, which I just went over with you. Here are the questions. The first question is list the New England colonies. Go back up to the map and look off the map and get the New England colonies. There's 6 of them. And then we've got some open ended questions. Why might someone want to move to the New England colonies? You got to give me a couple of reasons why someone would want to move there. That's a 2-sentence answer on number 2. On number 3, it says, why might farming not be a good choice for a New England colonist? That's a 2-sentence answer. And then what jobs were available? List 3 of them. If you have any questions, you guys know how to contact me. Take your time and do your very best. Thoroughly reread the text that'll be before your questions, which I just super quickly went over. I didn't go over every detail in it. You need to read the text yourself. Take your time, do your very best, and you will be very successful. See you soon.